How's it going, friends? My name is David, coach of the FC Popplio, and I am here with the draft analysis for the UBC, or the United Battle Championship. It is a league co-run by my friend Adam the Bee's Knees. You may remember him from last season of MPL Minors. We played him in playoffs. He invited us into this league, and I at first thought it was going to be a really casual for fun league with some upload stuff, but he ended up adding a bunch of really competitive people like Trev CL and The Verd and Rizzy Pow from MPL Majors, as well as there already being some cool people in there like Regulator. So yeah, I was added in, I was invited, I decided to join in for the draft. It was a price draft similar to the MPL this season, and we were allowed a single Z captain of any point value. It was 8 to 12 mons, I believe, and I was placed in the middle of the draft. Now, side note, I did not draft my team. I was away on vacation. So I needed a replacement. So I contacted TTM Jolt from the Token Minority. TTM stands for Token Minorities. But anyway, I contacted Jolt and I said, hey, I need you to draft my team for me. I would like the following 3 mons. I wanted Scolipede, I wanted Necrozma, and I wanted Espeon. Because of this whole Smoggin banning Baton Pass thing, a lot of leagues are debating banning Baton Pass as well. And so to sort of see and form an opinion on Baton Pass in general, I wanted to draft it in a league. I wanted to draft a committed Baton Pass team in league. So I told Jolt I wanted these 3 mons. You can get whatever you want afterwards, but these are the main 3 that I want at some point in the draft. So Jolt ended up drafting my team, and I really love it. It's super fun. It seems really neat. I haven't really put a lot of thought into going into each mod, but I'm just going to sort of talk about them in the order that he picked them and sort of give my comments. So without further ado, we can jump right into pick number 1, which you see on the screen. It is the Scolipede. I believe I was put in the middle of the draft, so a round 1 Scolipede isn't super common, but I think it's worthwhile if you really want Scolipede on your team. It's plausible to not expect it to come back to you in the first 7 picks of round 2. So if you really want it, and there's nothing really major that you want to pick, then picking a round 1 Scolipede seems fine. It can do a lot of things. It can set spikes and be bulky. It could Baton Pass, which is sort of the main goal of the team. It is the best Baton Passer, in my opinion, in the format, and as well as set up an SD and just start sweeping by itself. Now, as far as Baton Pass rules, you can only pass speed, or every other stat except speed, basically. You can't pass speed plus another stat. And so Scolipede is here to do just that. It's super versatile, and it's also my Z-Mon. Jolt decided to make it my Z-Move user, which I completely agree with. I think it's one of the better ones on the team, although it has some rough competition, which we'll get to in a bit. But having a Z-Move on it makes it very hard to prep for, because you have to prep for an offensive Z-Move set while also prepping for a sort of bulky or defensive Baton Pass set. And then depending on, and it's very different roles that it could do, so it really forces awkward prep by my opponent, which means if they predict the wrong set, then they could just get swept. So onward and forward. Round 2, he ends up picking me Necrozma. Now, I don't think Necrozma is a round 2 pick. I barely even think it's a round 3 pick or a round 4 pick. It is not a very good psychic type. It's probably on par with things like Mesprit and Uxie in terms of niche psychic types that are really nice in the format, but ultimately they're just kind of there. They're not on the same tier as a Reuniclus or any of the Lotties or things like that. But Necrozma is a very cool Pokemon. Prison Armor is very good. It's Filter that is immune to Mold Breaker, which is amazing. It has very good and usable stats with 127 special attack, which is about on par as Keldeo. And the only issue it really has is coverage. It doesn't really have good coverage. It does have utility moves like Stealth Rocks and Stored Power and Iron Defense, Calm Mind, Rock Polish. but coverage is its biggest issue. Like, it gets some physical coverage, like bug, ground, and fighting coverage on the physical side, whereas on the special side it gets like dark, psychic, shadow ball ish, and then hidden power, of course. But Necro is cool. I don't think it was it's a worthwhile round 2, but considering how popular it is, and it's still like a new Pokemon syndrome, a lot of people are calling it bad, a lot of people are calling it great. The big meme is that the GBA banned an NU Pokemon, but I think it's popular enough for Jolt to want to pick it round 2 in order to make sure that I got it, because it was one of the 3 main mons that I asked for. So round 3 rolls along, and there's a lot of really good electric types around, and then Jolt decides to get me a Xurkitree. Now, I would have preferred a Thundurus, both of which were still available at this point, but Xurkitree is a very powerful Pokemon. Trev CL from the NPL has used Scolipede plus Xurkitree in certain tournaments, like the for March Madness this year, I believe, and he showed that that's extremely powerful. Like, a bulky Xurkitree with +3 speed is absolutely terrifying, and Xurkitree in general is a very scary and very powerful Pokemon. Beast Boost is a great ability, and it's just always this sort of threat that you need to be ready for. And I think with Baton Pass and with sort of all the threats that I create with this team, that it can really do its role well. I'm still unsure if I really like it on the team, but I'll give it a few shots to try and show its stuff. So it was also a lot cheaper than the Thundies, so I think budgeting is a good reason to why he picked this over the, in my opinion, better electric types. So moving on, we have pick 4. I guess I needed some speed that wasn't just like baton passing speed, and a secondary Spiker and T-Spiker was very useful. Good water type, a good dark type. We have a Greninja. It's Torrent, just so everybody's aware. But Greninja is a really cool Pokemon. It's probably one of my favorites in terms of draft Pokemon, at least for this sort of like middle pick area. It's a very useful Pokemon to just pick up. I've used it a lot in like different draft tournaments and things like that, and I really enjoyed it there. So I'm really glad that he ended up picking it for me in a league season format. So Gren does a lot of cool stuff. It's very versatile, much like Scolipede. It has a sort of spike set and utility set, as well as a very offensive, like, I'm going to kill things set. So that's Greninja. It also gets U-turn, which makes it a really cool Volt Turn core between Xurkitree and Gren. And speaking of Volt Turn, we also continue that trend with a Serena. Serena is a Pokemon I've never really used, and I'm glad Jolt picked it at round 5. I would have rather had Decidueye, but I believe it was sniped right before Jolt's pick. I believe that's what he was going for as well. But Serena's okay. It can spin, which is very useful for things like hazard stacking, since I have 2 Spikers at the moment and 1 Rocker, so I could really hazard stack my opponent, and being able to spin away my own hazards is very good. Queenly Majesty removes priority, which means that things like Aqua Jet Mons and sort of quick attack things like Diggersby and Azumarils and Crawdonts and things like that, they're all struggling to get like little chip damage on my Serena if they need to. I don't know why Aqua Jet would be used, but it's immune to Sucker Punch too, so that's cool. It's an interesting mon. I don't know if Serena is very good, but it's a mon that I always wanted to try, but it always got sniped from me. So I'm really excited to use it. I think it could do a lot of stuff, but time will tell. Up next is a Silvally. Now, Jolt has this sort of boner for a Silvally. He thinks it has potential to be really good. I used it in my minors tournament run, and while I liked it a lot there, I thought it was really underwhelming at the same time. It's a weird thought, but Silvally is a cool Pokemon in that it can be any type it wants to, and much like Greninja Necrozma and Scolipede. It has like an offensive set and a sort of bulky set. It has like a whole bunch of like different options that it can use, and I think that's really useful for prep, especially on a team that wants to be very varied and keep my opponent on their toes. So I think that is the best nature of Silvally. It's sort of like this fill-in hole, where if like, oh, an offensive X-type would be very good here, well, I can go Silvally X-type with SD and Flame Charge and multi-attack and this and that and be fine. I think that's his redeeming quality. I think it's really good. But at the same time, I'm curious to see how it fits on the overall arc of the team, and if it'll ever really be brought based on like how the rest of the team lineup goes. So next up, I didn't have a fairy, I didn't have a steel aside from Silvally, of course. So Jolt decided to pick up both with a Klefki. I think Klefki is a really good mon, especially in Baton Pass team, because it could set spikes and it could set up screens, and Prankster is just a really good ability in general. It acts as a pseudo ground check, because ground mons usually don't have coverage to hit steel aside from Earthquake, and so Klefki can use Prankster Magnet Rise to float above that and be pretty good. I want to figure out what else I wanted to say about this. A third spiker. I think that's also something key to note. Third spiker means that I can bring multiple spikers, and it's sort of hard to tell, well, is this spikes, is this spikes, is this spikes, blah blah blah. I never really feel pressured to not bring spikes. It's very easy for me to just stick it on one of my three very useful Pokemon that will probably be coming often anyway. So I think that's a really nice niche that it can provide, as well as being a very good Dragon check, which my team kind of lacked. So up next is Jolt's tried and true, his favorite Pokemon ever. It is Talonflame. I'm a little skeptical. I do like Talonflame, especially in the format. This gen it's a lot weaker than it used to be, since Gale Wings is absolutely atrocious now. Flame Body's still useful, and it still has his bulk up set and things like that, and it's very good if you pack a Swords Dance set. It's very fast, it's very strong, and it's a very good pivot, and I think mainly it benefits from spikes, and spikes are very good for Talonflame, and it's something that I have a lot of on this team, so I think that pairs extremely well, as well as the fact that with Baton Pass, my biggest issues are things like steals and I guess dark types, or maybe, yeah, mostly steals. Things like Bronzong, things like Jirachi are an issue, because Necrozma and Espeon, and to some extent Scolipede, depending on the steel type, have a lot of trouble breaking steel, and my team in general has a lot of trouble breaking steel at the moment, and I think a fire type that hits quite hard with a Flare Blitz is very useful, especially like a steel resist that fire provides is also very good. So Talonflame sort of fills that role. This is another mon I'm very curious about how it fits on the team and if it can fit on the team, but I'm very excited to use it. Up next, we are on pick 10 or 9. I want to say 9. Pick 9, and Jolt finally decides to grab me my Espeon that I requested. I had a backup for this. It was Xatu. Thankfully, I don't have to rely on Xatu, and I get the superior Magic Bouncer. Magic Bounce Espeon is a staple on Baton Pass before Necrozma came around, and then it became one or the other or both. So Espeon Scolipede is very terrifying because you speed pass into an Espeon. Espeon clicks Calm Mind and then fires off like 140 base power stored powers or something like that. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but it can't be taunted, it can't be statused, it can't be anything. It's just you have to kill it. So I think that's a really redeeming factor of Espeon. It's a pseudo hazard setter because I could switch it on hazards. It's immune to like any sort of status move that could bother me. Roar, it can't be roared out, which is a big problem for baton pass teams, like you just get roared out and you lose all your boosts. Magic Bounce fixes that. And yeah, in general, it's just a really good mon, and I'm hoping to bring it a lot more because a lot of people just kind of ignore it. They don't pick it up at all, and I think Magic Bounce is a very good ability. Its stats are very strong for what it wants to do, and I think it's really underrated in the format. So I have 2 picks left, and I have a lot of money to spend. Joel decides to keep the budget going and save my Mega Pokemon for last. So for my 10th pick, he picks up a Fighting type and a Rock Resist, something I needed very much between Talonflame and Scolipede. And that is Girder. Girder's super fat and it hits really hard considering it's a 105 base attack. And it gets Guts and Sheer Force and things like that. With an Eviolite, it hits very hard. It can go Life Orb if it wants to with that kind of attack stat. And it's just, in general, a really annoying Pokemon for teams to deal with if they aren't properly prepared. And if somehow I get a Baton Pass into it, or I set up a Trick Room, then it can do a lot of work with a more offensive set. It's also a good knockoff user, which I don't think I even had yet, so that's always good. Knockoff is very important. Priority is also very good. Between Greninja, Klefki to an extent, and Talonflame to an extent, I had some okay priority, but this really gives me some decent priority. And so, last but not least, we have my Mega, and it is a Mega Garchomp, a mon that I was really excited to try. When I saw that I had one, I was super giddy. It has 170 attack, 120 special attack, it's extremely bulky, and it's a second rocker. Its Sandforce is also pretty good if I can find a way to set it up with one of my Pokemon. I doubt I will, but it hits very hard. It has things like SD, and if I can get a Speed Pass into a sort of bulky Mega Garchomp, then the game pretty much ends. But yeah, anyway, that is the whole team. It's Scolipede, Necrozma, Espeon, plus a bunch of things that either pivot around, provide utility, or just hit super hard. And I think that's really fun. My biggest gripes with it are the Xurkitree being kind of an awkward, just an awkward spot, I think. It's a mon that I'm not sure how to feel about it just yet. And I do have a slot for an extra Pokemon, so I can get like a cheaper electric type with a second sort of utility mon if I want. But aside from that, my only other gripe is my Stealth Rockers are Necrozma and Garchomp, 2 mons that I really don't want Stealth Rocks on. So if I was to make any trades, it would probably be Xurkitree for an electric type and a rocker. I don't think I'm going to end up doing that. I think I kind of like the team as is. I think it's very good as is. But I'm really excited to use it regardless. And I'm going to hopefully do well this season with the UBC and the MPL minors. It will be very tough. But huge shout out to Jolt. I will put his stuff down below as he drafted me this really cool team. Go show him and his channel love. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.